They say knowledge is power, but they forget to mention the cost. The moment you start seeing through the illusions that comfort the average mind, life doesn't get easier. It gets heavier, sharper, more haunting, because ignorance isn't just bliss, it's armor, and once it cracks, reality cuts deeper than any blade. Most people navigate the world guided by inherited beliefs, borrowed truths, and unquestioned traditions. That's not stupidity, that's survival. The system was designed to reward the obedient, not the awake. But once you begin to think, truly think, you cross a threshold. You start questioning everything: why you work, who you love, what you believe. And suddenly, the world becomes less of a playground and more of a puzzle with missing pieces. This is the curse of awareness. You see too much, feel too much, and no longer fit into the narratives that society desperately wants you to follow. While others find meaning in routine, you drown in its emptiness. While others bond over surface conversations, you ache for depth, but find none. It's not depression, it's not dysfunction, it's clarity. And clarity, when rare, feels like isolation. But here's the paradox. The more awake you become, the lonelier it gets, because awakening isn't a group activity, it's an exile. Even Carl Jung warned us, enlightenment is not about imagining figures of light, but about making the darkness conscious. And once you start that process, there's no going back. But awareness isn't the enemy, it's the first step toward true freedom. Even if that freedom feels like a burden at first. Because in a world addicted to noise, your silence becomes dangerous. In a culture built on conformity, your questions become rebellion. And as we continue, you'll see that deep thinkers, far from being broken, are often the ones holding the fractured pieces of truth. Most people don't want truth. They want comfort dressed as truth, a story that flatters their choices, not one that questions them. And the more aware you become, the more you see this everywhere. From politics to religion, from relationships to education, the world is structured around collective illusions. And deep thinkers, they're like glitches in the matrix. Not because they know everything, but because they dare to doubt what everyone else accepts blindly. This doubt is not cynicism, it's curiosity laced with courage. It's the refusal to outsource your mind, the rebellion against manufactured narratives. But here's the price of such awareness. You begin to speak a language fewer and fewer people understand. You talk about depth. They want distraction. You talk about meaning. They prefer dopamine. You crave solitude. They call you antisocial. This mismatch isn't just emotional. It's existential. You walk around with a brain wired for pattern recognition and long-term thinking, trapped in a culture obsessed with instant gratification. You are not broken, you are rare. But rarity in a herd feels like a flaw, and yet awareness doesn't just make you different, it gives you responsibility. Once you see the mechanism of illusion, you're no longer a passive observer, you're a potential disruptor. That's why society resents the deeply aware. You force them to feel what they've worked so hard to ignore. Nietzsche once said, "The higher we soar, the smaller we appear to those who cannot fly." So don't shrink. Don't dilute your depth to fit shallow waters. Because your clarity, even if it costs connection, is your compass. It keeps you from drifting into a life of quiet desperation. And maybe, just maybe, It draws others like you out of the shadows. Being deeply aware is like living with high-resolution vision in a world that's content with blurry outlines. You notice what others ignore, the silent compromises, the unspoken fears, the lies people tell themselves just to get through the day. This sensitivity, while powerful, comes with pain, because you can't unsee what you now see. You can't pretend the noise is music or that conformity is virtue. Awareness burns illusions, not gently, but violently. It tears down the scaffolding of false comfort. And what's left? Raw truth, unvarnished complexity, a loneliness that isn't about lacking company, but about lacking kindred souls. That's the irony. The more awake you are, the harder it becomes to connect. Because most connections rely on mutual delusion. We pretend together that everything is okay. We laugh at things that aren't funny. We agree just to avoid discomfort. But the deeply aware, they'd rather sit in silence than sell out their soul for small talk. They don't crave crowds. They crave authenticity, not popularity, but resonance. And in that search, they often walk alone, not because they hate people, but because they refuse to wear the mask. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But that privilege, it comes with exile, not physical exile, psychological. You are present, but not always included. You are seen, but rarely understood. Yet despite the isolation, there is a strange beauty in this curse, because it strips life to its essence. No distractions, no illusions, just you and what matters. And once you find peace in that clarity, even if it's quiet, even if it's cold, it becomes unshakable. Not because it protects you from pain, but because it makes pain meaningful. And in a world obsessed with avoiding discomfort, those who embrace it become unbreakable. There comes a point where awareness is no longer a burden, but a blade. Not one that cuts others, but one that carves away everything false within yourself. Because once you've seen the machinery behind the mask, the gears of greed, insecurity, social conditioning, you can't go back to being blind. You don't just see the truth, you become it. And while that doesn't grant you peace, not always, it gives you alignment, a kind of inner coherence that no external chaos can touch. You no longer beg for understanding, you simply exist in your own clarity. And sometimes that clarity is louder than 1,000 voices shouting nonsense. You'll walk alone at times. That's inevitable. You'll be called cold, arrogant, disconnected, because in a world that rewards compliance, integrity looks like rebellion. But what they don't understand is that this rebellion isn't against them. It's against your former self. The one that stayed silent when something felt wrong. The one that smiled to avoid conflict. The one that chose comfort over truth. That version of you had to die for something real to live. And now that it has, you don't need applause. You need space to think, to feel, to breathe without filters. You don't chase validation, you chase resonance. And when you find someone who sees the world with the same burning clarity, even one person, it feels like coming home. This is the paradox of awareness. It isolates, then it liberates. It breaks you, then rebuilds you. Honest, raw, unshakable. And the world may never understand that, but deep down, you don't need it to. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to awaken. Now answer this. If your awareness separates you from the world, would you rather be accepted or real?